My name is Ariana. I am 48 years old. And this is the story of a fleeting and passionate love that has given me back the desire to live. But that is wrong. My story with my son-in-law never had, nor will have a happy ending. Today I want to share it with you so that, like me, you learn that there are loves that are destined to fail before they begin, and that forbidden love can hurt more than any love that is experienced. Sometimes I wonder if it is possible to discard your feelings for the sake of your family. That is the question I asked myself after confirming what I felt for my son-in-law. It all started 3 months ago, when my daughter called us one morning crying. A tragedy had occurred. The apartment that she and her husband had bought had caught fire due to an electrical fault, and they had lost a large part of their personal belongings. They remained in the apartment for days. A hotel while they did all the paperwork to inspect the apartment and begin to fix it. Andres had not asked permission from his job to do all the relevant paperwork, since the owner of the building did not want to take responsibility for the accident and would have to take him to court. In those days, he had barely had the opportunity to see them. Fortunately, once it was confirmed that the fire was caused by an electrical fault on the floor where the apartment was located, both the owner of the building and the insurance company that he had hired for these cases proceeded to begin the repairs. The outlook seemed encouraging, even though they had lost all their belongings. However, a few days later, a report arrived from the construction company that the floor had been left in a very bad state. So much so that not only did they have to repair it, but the building owner had to hire a civil inspector to check that the floor was not defective, as things seemed less and less encouraging. My husband and I suggested that my daughter move in with us for a while they resolved the problem. We had a free room with a bathroom included so that they would not have to pay for a hotel or rent an apartment. Plus, this would allow them to save up to refurbish the new floor. So the idea seemed appropriate to my husband and I. But it was not until 2 weeks later that they finally moved in with us. Because at first, my son-in-law did not agree, saying that he did not want to get in the way, but after convincing him, he finally accepted. I will not lie to you at that moment. I never imagined that an act of kindness on the part of my husband and I would lead me to a forbidden encounter with my son-in-law, and that I would begin to weave the first threads that would unite us in a fire from which I would emerge, and that there was no escape when the long-awaited day finally arrived. My husband left for work early in the morning, and I prepared to receive my daughter and her husband. An hour later, the door rang, and when I opened the door, I found my daughter and my son-in-law with a tired but relieved expression. "Do you want to eat?" I asked. I have always believed that a hot meal can solve problems, and it seems that they need the warmth of a good meal. "Thank you." "Mom," my daughter thanked me, but Andres, my son-in-law, stayed in the living room answering some messages. "What will you do now?" When I finished setting the table, my daughter had a cup of coffee and explained to me that they had to take out their identification documents, inform their work about the accident, and many other things. Errands that would keep them busy all week. "If you need help with something, you can tell me," I offered with a smile. Andres returned a few minutes later and gave me a bright smile of gratitude. He had always been like a ray of light. He was a hard-working boy, kind, cultured, and with a cheerful personality, totally different from my daughter, who was taciturn, sarcastic, and extremely competitive many times. I wondered what Andres had seen in my daughter because he always seemed in love. But once we lived under the same roof, little by little, the answers began to arrive, while I saw them interact. Andres had assumed much of the responsibilities of the accident. Every day, he ran errands, reviewed contracts, sent emails, and attended to his work business. My daughter, on the other hand, was always in a bad mood. She never seemed happy with the progress of the construction company. She was not happy with the food I prepared for her. And one time when night came and we went to sleep, I heard her complaining to Andres. I want to clarify that I love my daughter. When my husband and I got married, we discovered that we could not have children for 2 years. We fought to achieve it. And finally, we had Natalia. She had given us the greatest joy in the world. But the reality is that we had never been close. Natalia has always been kinder to her father, and I was happy to see them happy. But when I saw the way she treated her husband, I felt frustrated. In all the years that I was married to my husband, I had never treated him like that. We have had our bad moments, but we have never crossed the line. And although over the years, I knew that my husband was hiding things from me, that his late encounters had another reason our marriage was truly stable. 2 weeks went by, and one Monday morning, Andrzej informed me that his boss had accepted his request to work from home, and that news, far from bringing calm, made things worse. Natalia seemed to repudiate the fact of having Andrzej at home all day. It seemed that my daughter was not happy with the decisions that Andrzej made with respect to his work. She always criticized him harshly, asking him to stop so she could buy him something to eat. Although, in the house, nothing was missing in addition to other questionable things, she said it. And to my surprise, I noticed that Andrzej no longer seemed to tolerate those behaviors. Alarmed, one night I decided to tell my husband the situation. Natalia and Andrzej do not get along. I blurted out. Suddenly the room was lit by the table lamp next to my husband from what I could see. When he looked up from the book he was reading and looked at me in what way, he asked. They fight a lot. I told him. My husband sighed and put down the book. All couples fight. That does not mean that they do not get along. He mentioned, you do not understand. I insisted Natalia treats Andrzej very badly at first. I thought it was because of the accident and that the stress made her act like that. But you know, your daughter, she treats him like a servant, and he does not seem as happy as before at first. My husband was silent for a few minutes, and when he spoke, sleep was already starting to take over. Me talked to, he casually guided. Find out what is happening, and Natalia asked, a little confused. In my opinion, the one who most needed intervention between us two was my daughter. I will talk to her. Don't worry, my husband said. But for some reason deep down, I knew that my husband would not talk to Natalia, and I was not mistaken. 2 days later, my daughter went shopping after a heated argument with her husband, and Andrzej stayed home doing laundry, running away from problems at breakfast. He had barely spoken, and the worst thing was that Natalia did not seem to notice the state of Andrzej. So I wanted to take advantage of the fact that there was no one else in the house to talk to him. Do you need something? Andrzej asked, looking towards the laundry room. He was leaning against the washing machine without doing anything. She looked at me for a few seconds before giving me one of her smiles. No thanks, Ariana. Everything is fine, she replied. I see you are good at housework, I said casually as I walked into the laundry room. Your mom taught you. Actually, she didn't reply with a lost look, but Natalia is not good at those things, and I take care of it. At that moment, I felt bad. Somehow I felt responsible, but another part of me told me that there was no reason to feel that way because Natalia never wanted to learn because of my husband. She had always been a spoiled brat. And as she grew up and became an adult woman, nothing had changed. But now that behavior was affecting the person I had chosen as a husband. How is your work going? I asked. Andrzej came to his senses and looked at me. Not very well. My boss wants me to go back to the office, so I don't know if I'll be able to continue working from home, he explained quickly. And if I'm not at home, it will be difficult to continue with the reconstruction of the apartment. The owner of the building calls me at least twice a day, not mentioning the checks I have to sign to the bank to approve renovations in areas not covered by insurance. There are many things, and I won't be able to attend to them in the office. When he finished talking, it became clear to me how distressed and stressed I was. Then I thought of a simple solution, something I used to do with my husband when he came home after a long, hard day of work. You need to relax, don't think about anything. I proposed with enthusiasm, 0 worries. Sounds good, he agreed. But in an instant, his face darkened again. What's happening? I asked him, getting closer. Things aren't going well with your daughter, Andrzej murmured. My heart ached strongly. But at that moment, I didn't think that out because of Andrzej's proximity. Still, do you have any wine in stock? Andrzej asked, diverting his attention from his personal but not with bad intentions. Business? He gave me a funny smile, and I couldn't help laughing. Of course, but it's not too early to drink. Andrzej shook his head with a smile. Suddenly the idea struck me that he was handsome, and that he looked provocative, in that white cotton flannel. But I dismissed the idea before it went another direction. I went to the kitchen and looked for the key to open the cupboard, where my husband and I kept our wine collection every time I saw. We had a copy for special occasions, and at that moment, I thought it was a special occasion Andres needed to relax, and that seemed enough reason for me to open all the bottles that my husband did not dare to open yet. I drank a wine from Chile from a trip we made 5 years ago, and another from a trip I did not remember, and with a bottle in each hand I returned to the laundry room. "Do you think this is enough?" I asked, smiling, raising both hands. "I hope so," answered Andres. We sat on the floor, like two friends while we shared the bottle. The conversation became lighter and sure. Andres loved movies, and I too. We spent a while sharing our opinion on some classics of the cinema, and when the conversation ceased in intensity, the silence allowed me to think what it was that he wanted to know. So I began to ask him again. What is it really happening with Natalia? Andres paused before taking a sip. It was so long that the first bottle was finished in a few seconds. "She doesn't love me," he answered. I opened my eyes, and "Why are you still with her?" I questioned, and he seemed to think about it for a while. And when he was uncorking the second bottle, his voice sounded sad. "Because I don't think I love her either, and it hurts me the idea that all these years didn't mean anything." At that moment, a strange feeling took over me, and instead of offering her advice as a mother-in-law, I offered it to her as if she were a friend who had decided that she deserved someone better than Natalia. "You are a good man, Andres," I began. "You deserve someone who loves you madly, someone like you." Andres dedicated another of his smiles to me, and what he said next changed everything. "I only know a person who looks like me," Ariana said, "and that person is you. You would love me madly if I were not married to your daughter and you to your husband." I was stunned. I did not know what to do or what to say. And maybe it was my reaction that driven him to do something more. Because in the blink of an eye, Andres approached me and took me to an unknown place of passionate sensations. While the inevitable happened, I forgot everything: who I was, where I was, and to whom I had given myself as I never did with my husband. Andres had taken me to sensations, so that I was surprised that my body was capable of enduring so much. I had never reached the peak of enjoyment so many times in a row, and I had never tasted the nectar of my love with such abandon, as if there was nothing better in the world. When Andres finished for the third time, I was surprised that he told me how much I had enjoyed. "Ariana, you are such a desirable woman," he whispered, his voice heavy with desire. "I never imagined this could feel. So I would go crazy if I could make you mine every day from now on." "And Natalia?" I asked quietly. "We shouldn't have done it," I added with a hint of remorse. The reality of what we had done felt like ice running over my skin. "You didn't want to?" he asked. I wanted to say yes, but my body had a different opinion. "I didn't know I wanted it until God," I answered. "Honestly then, let's do it again," he proposed enthusiastically. "At this point in my life, I don't care." And without resistance, we did it again. An hour later, I left the laundry room. The bottles had been left behind, and Andres followed me closely. But when I got to my room, he walked past me and entered the room I shared with my daughter for several days. Neither of us could look each other in the eye. It was clear that we did not want to remember what we had done, but my body refused to forget when I saw him in the morning when he came out of the bathroom, when I saw him smile after receiving good news. The feelings of affection that I felt for my son-in-law became something more, something that I thought I could only feel for my husband. It was possible to love two people at the same time. A few days later, my daughter and I moved out of the house. The flat was already habitable, so there was no point in putting off the move any longer. In the following months, my daughter and Andres separated, and I did not hear from him, or what had really happened. After a year, I found him in a shopping center, and the sparks in my stomach made me realize that the feelings that had arisen for and a smile of his was still latent. It was enough to attract me. If fate had decided that our paths would cross again, I would not resist. I would like to know if you have ever had a story similar to mine. Leave me your comment. Thank you very much, and until next time, goodbye. Next.